All right, so today we're diving into something pretty interesting, uh, something our listeners, actually sent our way. And it really got us thinking.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about the power of saying less. And you know how sometimes holding back can actually give you more influence,
Mm, that's a good one.
right? Like we always think about being the loudest voice in the room.
hmm
But what if the real key is knowing when to stay quiet?
It's funny because a lot of the stuff you sent over really highlights this idea
Yeah.
that it's not about being passive. It's really a deliberate strategy, and there are some surprising benefits to it.
Totally. And it seems like it applies to all sorts of situations from, like a classroom setting to a big negotiation, even just like everyday conversations.
Absolutely. It's really about understanding the dynamics of how people perceive both our words and our silence.
So let's break down this whole idea of less talk equals more power.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, it sounds a little like like a fortune cookie wisdom kind of thing.
Right.
But what's really going on here, why does holding back potentially give you an edge?
Well, one of the key things they talk about in this material is the idea of information asymmetry.
Okay.
So the more you talk, the more you inevitably reveal about yourself, right? Your weaknesses, your intentions, your strategy. And that can be a huge disadvantage because it gives other people leverage.
Makes sense.
But when you're more reserved, you keep people guessing. You create this sort of information vacuum, and they're left trying to figure you out.
Oh,
And
interesting.
often the assumptions they make end up being more beneficial to you than anything you could have said directly.
That's a fascinating point. It's almost like you're controlling the narrative by not fully revealing it.
Exactly.
One of the examples that really stuck with me was that scenario about the pop quiz.
Oh, yeah?
So, like, how does staying quiet in that kind of situation actually play to your advantage?
Well, think about it from a psychological perspective, right?
Mhm.
If you're the one immediately blurting out answers, even if they're right, you suddenly become the center of attention, and not always in a good way. You might get some envious looks from your classmates. Maybe the teacher starts scrutinizing you more.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
But if you stay calm, focus on your own work, and then confidently turn in a perfect score, it sends a totally different message.
Like, oh, wow, they really know their stuff.
Exactly. Your success speaks for itself, and you've avoided all that unnecessary attention and potential drama.
So it's almost like letting the outcome be the statement rather than all the talk leading up to it.
Right. It's about the result, not the commentary.
I like that. And it seems like this idea of being selective with your words really makes the things you do say carry more weight.
Hmm.
Like if someone's generally quiet when they do speak up, people tend to listen more intently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes back to our basic human wiring. We instinctively associate infrequent speech with thoughtfulness and deliberation. When someone
Wow.
isn't constantly chattering, their contributions feel more considered, more valuable.
It's like their words are a limited resource, so each one becomes more precious.
Exactly. It's like the scarcity principle applied to communication, and it shifts the focus from how much you're saying to the actual meaning behind each word.
And that ties in really well with the whole confidence thing,
Oh,
right?
definitely.
Because it suggests you don't need to constantly fill the silence or try to prove yourself verbally.
It's a quiet kind of confidence.
And speaking of competition, the sources also talked about how this applies to things like video games, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So how does keeping your strategy under wraps,
Yeah.
essentially saying less to your opponents, give you a competitive edge?
Well, in any kind of competition, information is key, right? And if you're constantly talking about your moves or your plans, you're basically handing your opponent the strategic advantage.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're giving away your playbook.
Exactly. But silence in this context becomes a form of strategic camouflage.
Interesting.
It forces your opponent to rely only on what they can observe, and your actions can be much harder to predict than your words.
Right, because they have to interpret what you're doing without any verbal clues.
Exactly. And that uncertainty can lead to hesitation, miscalculations, all sorts of things that weaken their position.
It's almost like you're creating this information vacuum that they have to navigate blindly.
And that can be a very powerful tactic.
Now, one thing the sources pointed out that I thought was really interesting is this potential tightrope walk.
Oh, yeah.
Because while saying less can project confidence, there's also this danger of it tipping over into arrogance if you take it too far.
Right. It's a fine line.
So how do you strike that balance? How do you make sure you're coming across as confident but not cocky?
Well, I think it comes down to the difference between genuine confidence and the need to constantly prove yourself.
Okay.
Often, people who are truly secure in their abilities don't feel the need to brag or boast.
Right.
Like in that example with the school competition, the student who just quietly focuses on their project and lets the quality of their work speak for itself, they often come across as more genuinely competent than the one who's constantly talking themselves up.
It's like that saying, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. True confidence often reveals itself through what you do, not what you say you're going to do.
So it's really about emphasizing actions over words. And it seems like that's a recurring theme in all these sources.
Definitely.
Like the idea that what you actually accomplish ultimately carries more weight than all the talk and hype.
It's about letting your results be your primary mode of communication.
I like that. And that board game analogy really drives that point home.
Yeah.
You know, the player who quietly makes their moves often ends up surprising everyone because their opponents were so focused on their silence that they underestimated their skill.
It's a classic example of how underestimating the quiet ones can backfire.
So if we had to sum up the key takeaway for our listeners, what's the big aha moment here when it comes to the power of saying less?
Well, I think the core message is that strategic silence can be an incredibly powerful tool for both influencing others and shaping how they perceive you. We often get caught up in this idea that we need to be constantly talking to be heard or to get ahead.
Right.
But over-talking has some inherent risks. You can reveal too much, dilute your message, or even come across in ways you don't intend.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
The real power often lies in that thoughtful restraint, in the conscious choice to say less and let your actions and your results speak for themselves.
That's a powerful thought, and it's definitely something for all of us to consider as we go about our day.
Absolutely.
So I'd encourage everyone listening to think back on a recent situation where you might have felt that urge to fill every silence or over-explain yourself. What might have happened if you'd embraced a little more strategic quiet? What opportunities might have opened up, or how might people's perceptions of you have shifted?
Those are good questions to ponder.
It's a different way of approaching communication, but it seems like there's a lot of untapped potential there.
Definitely something to think about.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for exploring this with us.
My pleasure.
And to all our listeners, keep those questions and insights coming. We'll see you next time.
See you then.